Daniel Carter had learned something the hard way. Life doesn't slow down for anyone, not for broken hearts, not for sleepless nights, and definitely not for a single dad trying to hold everything together. Every morning, his day started the same way. Dad, are you awake? A soft little voice would come from the doorway. Daniel would open his eyes, already tired. But the moment he saw his 7-year-old daughter Lily standing there in her pajamas, everything else faded. Yeah, princess, he'd smile. I'm up, because no matter how exhausted he was, no matter how heavy life felt, he didn't have the luxury of falling apart. By 8 a.m., Daniel wasn't just a father anymore. He was an employee, a problem solver, a man trying to survive in a world that didn't care about his struggles. He worked at one of Chicago's fastest-growing tech companies, a place full of sharp minds, expensive suits, and people who looked like they had everything figured out. Daniel knew better, because sometimes the people who look the strongest are the ones barely holding it together. And no one proved it more than his CEO, Evelyn Hart. If you asked anyone in the company about Evelyn, they'd all say the same thing. She's brilliant. She's untouchable. She doesn't make mistakes. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and instantly owned it. Perfect posture, sharp eyes, cold confidence, the kind of leader people respected and feared. Daniel had only spoken to her a few times. Short conversations, strictly professional. And honestly, that's how he preferred it. Because people like Evelyn Hart didn't belong in his world. And he definitely didn't belong in hers. But lately, something had changed. At first, it was subtle. So subtle that most people didn't even notice. Missed meetings, delayed responses, moments where she just paused, like her mind had drifted somewhere far away. Daniel noticed, not because he was looking, but because he was used to noticing things others ignored. It was part of his job and part of his life. One evening, everything shifted. The office had mostly emptied out, the usual noise of keyboards and conversations replaced by silence. Daniel was on the executive floor, fixing a system issue that couldn't wait until morning. It was late, later than he should have been there, but overtime meant extra money. And extra money meant a better life for Lily. So he stayed. As he walked down the quiet hallway, he noticed something strange. A light was still on inside the CEO's office. That alone wasn't unusual. Evelyn was known for working late, but something about it felt different. The blinds were slightly open, and through the glass he saw her, Evelyn Hart, sitting alone, her heels kicked off to the side, her posture no longer perfect, her head resting in her hands. Daniel froze, because this wasn't the woman everyone knew. This wasn't the untouchable CEO. This was someone else. Someone tired, someone human. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. He shouldn't be seeing this. This wasn't his place. So he quietly turned, ready to walk away, pretend he never saw anything, just like everyone else would. Daniel. Her voice stopped him. Soft. Almost fragile. He hesitated. Then slowly turned back. She was looking at him now. Not with authority. Not with confidence, but with something he had never seen before in her eyes. Vulnerability. Can you come here for a second? She said. Daniel stepped inside the office, unsure of what this moment was or what it meant. The room felt different. Quieter. Heavier. Like something unspoken was hanging in the air. Is everything okay, ma'am? He asked carefully. For a second, she didn't answer. She just looked at him, like she was trying to decide something, like she was standing at the edge of a line she wasn't supposed to cross. Then finally, she exhaled slowly, and what she said next was nothing like what he expected. I don't think I can do this anymore. Daniel blinked, caught completely off guard. His mind raced. Do what? Run the company, handle the pressure, or something deeper, something more personal. He took a small step forward. You don't mean that, he said gently, but even as he said it, he could tell she did. Evelyn let out a quiet, almost broken laugh. You have no idea how many times I've said that to myself this week. Her voice wasn't the voice of a CEO anymore. It was the voice of someone exhausted, someone who had been strong for too long. Daniel didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix it, because sometimes people don't need solutions. They just need someone to listen. She stood up, slowly, wrapping her arms around herself like she was trying to hold something together. I walk into that boardroom every day, she said, her voice shaking slightly, and everyone looks at me like I have all the answers. He paused, but the truth is, her eyes met his. And for the first time, there was no wall between them. I feel like I'm about to lose everything. The words hit harder than anything else, because Daniel understood that feeling, not as a CEO, but as a father. As a man who had stood in his kitchen at 2 a.m., wondering how he was going to make it through another month. And in that moment, something shifted, not just in her, but in him too. He wasn't looking at Evelyn Hart, the powerful CEO, anymore. He was looking at someone who was drowning. Just like he had been once, and without thinking, without overanalyzing, he said something simple, but real. You don't have to carry it alone. Silence filled the room, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was different. Evelyn stared at him, like his words had reached a place no one else had. Like for the first time in a long time, someone actually saw her. And in that quiet office, late at night, between a single dad and a woman who had everything except peace, a connection formed, not loud. Not dramatic. But real. Because sometimes the strongest people are just waiting for someone to notice they're breaking. And Daniel Carter had just done exactly that. But what he didn't know yet was that this moment, this simple conversation, would change everything. That night, Daniel Carter didn't sleep properly, not because of work, not because of stress, but because of her words. I don't think I can do this anymore. They kept replaying in his mind over and over again, because he had heard those words before, just in a different voice, his own. He sat at the edge of his bed early in the morning, watching Lily sleep peacefully, her small hand wrapped around her teddy bear, her breathing soft, calm, and bothered by the weight of the world. And for a moment, Daniel envied that innocence, because once you've felt real pressure, real fear of losing everything, you don't get that peace back easily. Dad. Lily's sleepy voice pulled him back. He smiled instantly. Morning, princess. She rubbed her eyes and sat up. You look tired. He chuckled softly. Yeah. Just a long night. She tilted her head. You always say that. And just like that, a simple sentence hit deeper than it should have, because she was right. He always said that. And maybe he had been tired for longer than he realized. But there was no time to think about that. Life moved fast. And responsibilities didn't wait. By the time Daniel dropped Lily off at school and reached work, everything looked normal. Employees rushing around, phones ringing, meetings scheduled, deadlines chasing everyone. And right at the center of it all, Evelyn Hart, standing in the conference room. Confident. Sharp. Untouchable. Just like always. If Daniel hadn't seen her last night, he would have believed this version completely. No cracks. No weakness. No sign of the woman who had whispered something so heavy it stayed with him all night. Their eyes met briefly across the room. And for a split second, something passed between them. Recognition. But then just like that, it was gone. The meeting continued. Numbers. Strategies. Decisions. Evelyn handled everything flawlessly. Like a machine programmed for perfection. But Daniel noticed something others didn't. Single quotes. The small pauses, the slight tension in her jaw, the way her fingers tightened around her pen. She wasn't okay. She was just hiding it better. Later that day, Daniel was called to her office. He stood outside the door for a moment, not because he was scared, but because he didn't know which version of her he was about to face. The CEO or the woman from last night? Come in, her voice called. Calm. Controlled. He stepped inside. And there she was, back in her element, sitting behind her desk. Perfect posture, sharp eyes. For a second, he wondered if he had imagined everything. Daniel, she said professionally, I need an update on the system issue from last night. And just like that, it felt like business as usual. He explained everything clearly, efficiently, just like he always did. She listened carefully, nodding slightly, focused, but then as he turned to leave, her voice stopped him again. Wait. That one word felt different this time, softer. He turned back slowly. There was a pause, a long one, and then her expression changed. Not completely, but enough. A bit. Last night. She started, then stopped, like she wasn't sure how to continue. Daniel didn't say anything. He just waited. I shouldn't have said that, she finally said, her tone quieter now, more honest. Why not? He asked gently. She let out a breath. Because people like her, they weren't supposed to break. They weren't supposed to doubt. They definitely weren't supposed to admit it. I'm the CEO, she said simply. Asking for help isn't really part of the job description. Daniel gave a small, understanding smile. Maybe that's the problem. She looked at him, curious, double quotes. You think you have to do everything alone, he continued. But that's not strength. He paused. That's pressure. The word hung in the air, heavy, accurate. Evelyn looked away, toward the window. The city stretched endlessly beyond the glass. Busy, unforgiving. My father built this company, she said after a moment, her voice softer now, more personal. Daniel stayed still, listening. He made every decision, she continued, every risk, every success. It was his. She swallowed slightly. And now he's gone. The room felt quieter, and suddenly, she added, I'm supposed to be him. There it was, the truth behind everything. Daniel felt something shift inside him again, because now it made sense. This wasn't just stress. This wasn't just responsibility. This was grief, mixed with expectation, mixed with fear. You're not him, Daniel said gently. She turned back to him, surprised, double quotes. And you don't have to be, for a moment. She just stared at him, like no one had ever said that to her before. Everyone expects me to be, she replied quietly. Daniel shook his head slightly. No. They expect you to lead. He paused. But that doesn't mean losing yourself. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like something was finally being understood. Evelyn walked slowly toward the window, standing beside it, looking out. I haven't slept properly in weeks, she admitted. Every decision feels like it could destroy everything. Daniel leaned slightly against the desk. Relax, calm, double quotes. I know that feeling, he said. She glanced at him. You do? He nodded. When my wife left. He began, then stopped for a second, choosing his words carefully. I had no idea what I was doing, he continued. I was just trying to keep things from falling apart. Her expression softened. But you figured it out, she said. Daniel smiled slightly. Not really. She frowned a little. I just kept going, he added. Because someone was depending on me, your daughter, she said quietly. He nodded. There was something in her eyes now. Something different. Not just understanding, but curiosity. How do you do it? She asked. Do what? Carry all that. And still seem okay. Double quotes. Daniel thought for a moment, then gave an honest answer. I don't always feel okay. That answer surprised her. But I don't let that stop me, he continued, because at the end of the day, he paused. She needs me to show up. Evelyn looked down slightly. As if that idea, that simple responsibility, was something she had never experienced. I've never had that, she said softly. And that line, it hit differently. Because for all her success, all her power, she didn't have someone who needed her like that. And maybe that's why everything felt so empty. Daniel didn't respond immediately. Because some truths don't need fixing. They just need to be felt. After a moment, she looked back at him. Why are you still here, Daniel? She asked. It wasn't about the job. Not really. It was about the moment. He smiled slightly. Because I know what it feels like. He paused. To carry everything alone, their eyes locked, and this time, neither of them looked away because something had changed. Again, not just understanding. Not just empathy, but connection. And sometimes that's how the strongest bonds begin. Not with love. Not with attraction. But with two people finally being honest. About how broken they really feel inside. And for the first time in a long time, Evelyn Hart didn't feel like she was standing alone. But what neither of them realized yet was that this connection, this quiet understanding, was about to turn into something much deeper. Something had changed, not loudly. Not in a way anyone else could notice, but for Daniel Carter and Evelyn Hart, everything felt different. The next few days went by like any other. Meetings, deadlines, pressure. The company kept moving forward at full speed. And Evelyn, she was still the same on the outside. Sharp, focused, untouchable. But behind closed doors, a different version of her started to appear. It began with small things. A message from her assistant. Miss Hart wants to see you. At first, Daniel assumed it was work-related. And technically, it was. System updates, operational checks, minor issues that didn't really require his level of attention. But he didn't question it, because deep down, he knew this wasn't just about work anymore. The first time it happened, he stepped into her office, expecting the usual formal tone, but instead she was standing by the window, looking out at the city again. You ever feel like this place never slows down? She asked without turning. Daniel closed the door behind him. Every day, she gave a small nod. Sometimes I think, if I stopped for even a second, everything would collapse. Daniel leaned slightly against the desk. Calm, grounded, double quotes. Or maybe, he said, it would keep going without you. That made her turn. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're not the only thing holding everything together. He paused. You just feel like you are. For a moment, she didn't respond because deep down, she knew he was right. But letting go of that control, that fear, that was something she didn't know how to do. The conversations didn't stop there. They started happening more often. Short at first, a few minutes here and there, but slowly, they got longer, more personal. Less about work and more about life. One evening, everything shifted. Again. Daniel was about to leave the office when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and instantly smiled. Hey, Princess, he answered. Evelyn was standing nearby. She hadn't meant to listen, but something about the way his voice changed made her pause. Soft, warm, completely different from the calm, controlled tone he used at work. Did you eat? He asked gently. A small laugh came through the phone. Evelyn couldn't hear Lily's words clearly, but she didn't need to. She could feel it, the connection, the love. The simplicity of it. And for a moment, she just stood there, watching him. Because in that moment, Daniel Carter wasn't just an employee. He was something she didn't understand yet, something real. When the call ended, he turned slightly and noticed her. Oh, sorry, she said quickly. I didn't mean to. It's okay. He smiled. There was a brief silence. Then she asked something unexpected. Does she make everything worth it? Daniel didn't even think. Every single second. No hesitation. No doubt. And that answer stayed with her. Later that night, Evelyn sat alone in her office again. But this time, it wasn't the same kind of silence. She wasn't overwhelmed. Not completely. She was thinking. About him. About what he had said. About the way his entire world seemed to revolve around something so simple, yet so powerful. Love. Not the kind you see in headlines. Not the kind built on status or success, but the kind that shows up every day. Quietly. Consistently. And for the first time in years, Evelyn Hart felt something unexpected. Not pressure. Not fear, but longing. The next day she called him in again. This time there was no excuse. No work issue. Just silence. You can sit, she said. He did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then finally she asked, what's she like? Daniel blinked. Lily? She nodded. And just like that, something shifted again. because now she wasn't asking about systems. Or work. She was asking about his world. Daniel leaned back slightly, a small smile forming on his face. She's everything, he said. Evelyn listened carefully. She thinks I can fix anything, he continued, even when I clearly can't. That made her smile slightly. She sounds lucky. Daniel shook his head. No, he said softly, I'm the lucky one. That answer hit her differently. Because in her world, success was measured in power. In control. In results. But here he was talking about something completely different, something she had never really experienced. Do you ever wish things were different? She asked quietly. Daniel thought about it. For a moment he considered everything he had been through. The struggles, the sleepless nights. The sacrifices. Then he shook his head. No, he said. She looked surprised. Why not? He smiled slightly. Because everything I went through. He paused, led me to her silence, but not an empty one. This time it was filled with something deeper. Understanding. Evelyn looked down at her hands, perfectly manicured. Steady. Controlled. But inside, everything felt different. Because for the first time she realized something. All her success, all her achievements, they didn't feel the same anymore. Because now she had something to compare them to, something real. Daniel, she said softly. He looked up. I don't think I've ever had something like that. Her voice wasn't weak. Just honest. And that honesty, it changed everything. Daniel didn't try to fix it, didn't try to give advice. He just said something simple. You still can. She looked at him. Not as her employee. Not as someone beneath her, but as someone who understood her in a way no one else did. And in that moment, two completely different worlds. A single dad trying to survive and a CEO trying to hold everything together didn't feel so different anymore. Because at their core, they were both just people trying not to break. But what neither of them realized yet was that this connection, this quiet, growing bond was about to cross a line, one that would change everything. Some moments don't announce themselves. They don't come with warnings. No build-up. No clear sign that everything is about to change. They just happen. Quietly. Unexpectedly. And before you realize it, nothing feels the same anymore. That's exactly what was about to happen to Daniel Carter and Evelyn Hart. The week had been brutal, a major deal, one that the company had been counting on for months, fell apart overnight. Investors pulled back. Board members started asking questions. Pressure built faster than anyone could control. And at the center of it all was Evelyn. She handled it like she always did. Calm. Precise. Unshaken. At least that's what everyone believed. But Daniel knew better. Because he had seen behind the curtain. He had seen the version of her that no one else had. And that made it impossible to ignore what was really happening. That night the office stayed lit longer than usual. Most employees had gone home. The building was quiet. Still. Heavy. Daniel was about to leave when something stopped him. A feeling. He glanced toward the executive floor. And without overthinking it, he walked back. Step by step through the silent hallway until he reached her office. The door wasn't fully closed. And inside she was there. Standing by the window again. City lights stretching endlessly behind her. But this time, something was different. Her posture, her stillness. It wasn't controlled. It was fragile. Daniel knocked softly. She didn't turn right away. Come in, she said quietly. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then finally she said it. I failed. The words were simple, but heavy. Daniel stepped closer. No, you didn't. She let out a quiet breath. Almost like a bitter laugh. You don't understand, she said. Her voice wasn't sharp this time. It was tired. I lost a deal that could have secured this company for years, she continued. The board is already questioning my decisions. She turned toward him now, and the worst part? Her eyes met his. I don't even know if they're wrong. Silence filled the room, but this wasn't the same silence as before. This one carried doubt, fear, uncertainty. Daniel didn't rush to answer because this wasn't about fixing a problem. This was about something deeper. You think one deal defines you? He asked calmly. She frowned slightly. In this world? She replied, yes. He shook his head. No. That one word caught her off guard. You're looking at this like everything depends on one moment, he continued. But it doesn't. She crossed her arms slightly. It does when you're in my position. Daniel stepped closer. And what position is that? He asked. She hesitated. The one where everyone expects you to be perfect. There it was. The truth, not about the deal, but about her. Daniel nodded slowly. I don't know what it's like to run a company, he said. She gave a small, tired smile. Exactly, but I do know what it's like. He continued, to feel like everything depends on you. That made her pause. Because now he was speaking her language. Every decision you make, he said, feels like it could break everything. Her expression softened. Every mistake feels bigger than it actually is. She looked at him more closely now. And you start believing, he paused, that if you mess up once, everything falls apart. She finished quietly, their eyes locked, because for the first time she didn't feel misunderstood. She felt seen. There was a long pause. Then slowly she walked closer, closing the distance between them. Then tell me something, she said softly. Her voice lower now, more personal. How do you do it? Daniel didn't move. Do what? How do you carry all that? She gestured slightly, and not break. The question wasn't about work anymore. It wasn't about the company. It was about her. And the weight she had been carrying alone. Daniel took a slow breath. Then answered honestly, you don't. She frowned slightly. What? You don't do it without breaking, he said. That wasn't the answer she expected. But you don't stay broken either, he continued. She watched him carefully. You keep going, he said, because you have something that matters more than the fear. Her voice dropped even lower. And what if you don't? That question hit harder than anything else. Because it revealed something deeper. Not just pressure, but emptiness. Daniel looked at her. Really looked at her. And for a moment, he saw it clearly. All her success, all her power, and yet she was still searching for something real. You find it, he said quietly. She shook her head slightly. It's not that simple. No, he agreed. It's not. He took a step closer. But it starts with not doing everything alone. That line, that simple truth, hit her harder than anything else, because deep down she knew it was true. For a moment neither of them moved, the distance between them now almost gone. And then, without thinking, Evelyn did something she had never done before. She reached out and gently held his hand. Time seemed to stop. Daniel didn't pull away, because this wasn't about power or control or anything complicated. It was something much simpler. Two people finding something they didn't know they needed. Her hand was warm, slightly tense. But slowly it relaxed. And in that moment, everything changed. She looked up at him. Not as a CEO, not as someone in charge, but as someone vulnerable, someone real. And for the first time, there was no distance between them. No titles. No expectations. Just connection. After a few seconds, she pulled her hand back, not abruptly, just enough to remind herself where she was, who she was. I shouldn't have done that, she said quietly, but her voice didn't sound regretful, just aware. Daniel didn't respond immediately, because he understood this wasn't a mistake. It was a moment, and some moments aren't meant to be explained. They're just meant to be felt, he said softly. She looked at him again. And this time she didn't look away, because now everything was different, not just between them, but inside them too. And as Daniel finally turned to leave, he knew something this wasn't just about helping her anymore. And for Evelyn, standing there alone again, it wasn't the same kind of loneliness, because now she knew what it felt like not to be alone. And that feeling was something she wasn't ready to lose. But what neither of them realized yet was that this moment, this simple touch, would lead to something neither of them could control. Some endings don't feel like endings at all. They feel like something else. A shift, a quiet change, the kind that doesn't demand attention, but slowly rewrites everything. That's what this was. Not the end of a story, but the beginning of something neither Daniel nor Evelyn had planned. The morning after that night felt different, not awkward. Not tense. Just different. Daniel woke up before his alarm, staring at the ceiling. Thinking. Not about work. Not about deadlines. But about her. About that moment, that brief, silent connection that somehow said more than words ever could. He ran a hand through his hair and sat up. Dad. Lily's voice came from the doorway again. He turned and smiled instantly. Hey, princess. She walked in, studying his face carefully. You're smiling, she said. He paused, then chuckled softly. Am I? She nodded. Double quotes. Did something good happen? For a moment, he didn't know how to answer that, because something had happened. Something good, something real. But it wasn't something he could explain easily. Maybe, he said simply. He grinned. I like maybe. And just like that, the heaviness in his chest felt lighter. At work, everything looked the same, but felt completely different. Evelyn walked into the office like she always did. Confident. Composed. But now Daniel could see it. The difference. It wasn't in her posture, not in her voice. It was in something more subtle. She wasn't pretending as much anymore, and that changed everything. Their eyes met briefly across the office floor. And this time, neither of them looked away immediately. No words, but understanding. Later that day, she called him in again, but this time, it felt different from the start. No excuses. No work-related reason. Just him. Close the door, she said softly. He did. And for a moment, neither of them spoke, because both of them knew this conversation mattered. I've been thinking, she said finally. Daniel leaned slightly against the desk. That's usually dangerous, he replied lightly. Small smile appeared on her face. Yeah, she said, especially for someone like Emmy. There was a pause. Then she looked at him more seriously. I don't want to go back to how things were. That line wasn't about work. It was about everything. Daniel didn't rush to respond, because this wasn't something to take lightly. What do you want instead? He asked calmly. She hesitated. Not because she didn't know, but because saying it out loud made it real. I want. She started. Then stopped. Her voice softer. Now something real. Silence, but not empty. Full. Daniel looked at her carefully. And for the first time, he saw not just the CEO, but the woman behind everything. The one who had been carrying too much for too long. You already have that, he said quietly. She shook her head slightly. No, she replied. I've seen it now. She took a small step closer. And I know the difference. Their eyes locked again, and this time there was no hesitation. Do you have plans tonight? She asked. Daniel blinked slightly. Just dinner with Lily. A small pause. Then carefully, can I join you? That question carried more weight than it seemed, because it wasn't just about dinner. It was about stepping into his world, a world completely different from hers. Simple. Warm. Real. Daniel studied her for a moment. Are you sure? He asked. She nodded. I think I need to see it. See what? She smiled softly. What worth it looks like. That night, everything changed. Evelyn had been in luxury restaurants. Private events, exclusive dinners with powerful people. But this was different. Daniel's home was simple. Warm. Lived. In. And the moment the door opened, Lily ran toward him. Then she stopped, noticing Evelyn. Her curious eyes lit up. Who's that? She asked quietly. Daniel smiled. This is a friend. Evelyn felt something shifted. That word friend simple but meaningful. Lily walked closer, steadying her. You look fancy, she said honestly. Evelyn blinked, then laughed softly. I get that a lot. Within minutes, everything felt easy. Lily talked. Laughed. Showed her drawings. And Evelyn. She listened. Really listened. Not like a CEO, not like someone managing a conversation, but like someone who wanted to be there. At one point, Lily grabbed her hand. Come see my room. Evelyn hesitated for just a second, then followed. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. Again, because this was what she had been missing. Not power, not control, but connection. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Evelyn stood outside with Daniel. The air was cool, quiet, completely different from the chaos of her world. She looked at him. Not as her employee. Not as someone beneath her, but as someone who had shown her something real. Thank you, she said softly. Daniel tilted his head slightly. For what? She smiled. For reminding me. She paused. That life isn't just about holding everything together. Another pause. It's about having something worth holding onto. Daniel nodded slowly. Because he understood. He had always understood. They stood there for a moment. Not speaking. Not needing to. Because sometimes the strongest connections don't need words. And as Evelyn looked at him, she realized something. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about work. Or pressure or expectations. She was just present, and that feeling was something she didn't want to lose. Daniel, she said quietly. He looked at her. What is this? The question wasn't simple, but the answer didn't need to be complicated. He smiled slightly. Something real, he said. She held his gaze, and this time there was no hesitation. No fear, because now she knew this wasn't just the end of a difficult chapter. It was the beginning of something new, something honest. Something neither of them had planned, but both of them needed. And sometimes that's exactly how the best stories begin.